like Naomi Girma is going to bench any centre back in the WSL. Like there's just no doubt, including like possibly Leah Williamson, Millie Bright, all the best ones, right? So that's the potential that she's coming with.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. All of you lovely folk out there. The transfer window has just ended, and Kai and I thought that we would do a proper transfer video covering all of the teams. So we were really excited about doing that. And we decided that while we're doing it, we might as well make it even more exciting by making it a two-parter. So basically, you get the top four teams in the WSL in this video, and then there's another video that you get with all of the other teams in it. So, Kai, how are you feeling about the transfer window?
Oh, I'm so excited. Listen, I'm a Chelsea fan. You understand why I'm excited. But generally, I find January transfer windows really fun because they just this is so much chaos that's just packed in such a short frame of time.
Yeah.
And shout out to all the journalists who kind of chase everything and give us all the information, etc. And it's amazing, especially this window, to see the head loss of all the other fans on Twitter. An absolute joy.
Yeah, no, it is completely a joy. And like shout for us as well in this video, we've used information that girls on the ball have collated in their transfer tracker. So if y'all want more information about the transfers, make sure you go check that out because it's like very, very systematized, and it's quite impressive how they've kept track of so many different moving parts. So kudos to them and thank you for that resource, girls on the ball. Anyone who's interested, go check out that YouTube channel as well. They cover most of women's football. Anyway, moving on to the show today. Speaking of Chelsea and Chelsea fans being excited, Kai, one of the best transfer windows, I think, of the lot for you.
Oh, absolutely. I think, listen, when they kind of unveiled Naomi Gurma at Stanford Bridge, let's just say Stamford Bridge, that was amazing. Spending $1.1 million, it's a big move in the women's game. But then to go and pick up Kira Walsh, that's just mind blowing. But you know what? I want to start with the goalkeeper, the young 20-year-old goalkeeper that we've picked up from the Dutch league. Her name is Femke Leifting, I think is how you pronounce it. Um, she's obviously like a signing for the future, and somebody on Twitter was nice enough to put a comp video of her goalkeeping. She's a bit of a sweeper keeper, really good with her feet, very brave, going to the ball, like not afraid to come off her line. She had an amazing under 20 World Cup, and she was a Golden Glove winner there. So really, really exciting signing, to be honest. Like already, our like for example, our goalkeepers are Hannah Hampton, Zichira Musovic, and now Femke, and there's Katie Cox as well. It's likely that Musovic will probably move on. Like she's not been getting a whole lot of game time under Bumpastor. So then our average age of goalkeepers would come down even further because Hannah Hampton is 25. Katie Cox is, I think, 18, 19, and Femke is 20. So it's it's interesting. Like, of course, there's always the worry that the goalkeeper does not have the experience, but the hope is that in the next year or so, Hannah Hampton then becomes like a senior, more experienced goalkeeper, right? But very excited about the signing. But for me, I think Naomi Gurma and Kira Walsh for this season, I think the intent is very clear from Chelsea. The intent is to go for the Champions League. And I feel like in some ways, Compasser has been like rewarded for the start that she's had with Chelsea. Like your manager goes unbeaten for 20 games and she asks you to spend $1 million. Maybe you spend $1 million. I don't know how it works, but no, good on her and good on the team for going out and getting Girma. I think there were a lot of other teams who were interested in Girma, but I think from like a Chelsea point of view, I mean, I've seen Girma play a bit for San Diego Wave and also for the US women's national team. And my God, Ash, what an incredible defender. Like, honestly, I'm just really glad that we get to watch her week in and week out in the league. Just her 1v1 defending. And I think the thing that she adds the most to Chelsea's backline is probably her pace and her ability. Her tackles are amazing. Like, last ditch tackles are just so on point. She doesn't commit too early. She's just such a wonderful defender. And I think the other thing that she actually offers is to sort of play long balls, which are extremely, extremely accurate. So in some ways, she is like absolutely like the whole package. So I'm honestly very excited. And there's been a lot of conversations around um, like Chelsea hoarding players, etc. And to be fair to Chelsea, I feel like it is big money, right? And Kira Walsh and Girma are like exceptional players. But at the same time, these are two positions we actually lack depth in. I think we've said that on this channel a couple of times. We obviously have Buchanan, who's out with an ACL. And we also have Sophie Ingle, who's a defensive midfielder with some experience, who's out with an ACL. So, like, these two signings actually um, it's just strengthening the squad is what it's doing, except we've managed to pick up two world class players for both positions. I think I don't want to talk about Kira Walsh's abilities too much because I feel like a lot of our listeners may already be familiar with it. But for me, I think what is important is what it'll do for how Chelsea will set up, because Bompastor, when she was at Lyon, had Damaris Egurola as the defensive midfielder, and she preferred to play with a single pivot there. Now, if you look at Chelsea, we've been playing with a double pivot, usually of like Cuthbert or Muskin, or Cuthbert, sometimes with Captain, or some variation of that. So, what Kira Walsh brings is this opportunity. She's also somebody, she's like a proper ball playing defensive midfielder, right? So, if you look at Chelsea's attack, it usually goes down the wings, like with through our fullbacks. And now this opens up that opportunity to play through the middle because Kiram Walsh's like progressive passing is absolutely immense. So yeah, I think my only question is one: why did Arsenal let this happen? Because in the summer, they were willing to pay £1 million for Walsh, and Barcelona turned that down. But possibly that's because Jonas wanted Kira Walsh and Slegers does not feel the same way. Um, or maybe the club's intent has changed a little bit. We're not sure. Maybe they don't want to spend 1 million on a player with a coach who's not quite proved herself yet. I don't know.
Or,
Um,
it just could be that Kira Walsh doesn't want to go to Arsenal anymore. I mean, it could be a little bit of that as well, right? Because like when you're going to play with Jonas, it was kind of like a known name, and there's some sort of like, like with managers who are like big in the game, you kind of follow them as players as well, right? There's that opportunity to familiarize yourself with a big manager. Now in
yeah,
this case, I like, you would want to do that with Sonia Bompastor, but you don't to take that risk of uncertainty with someone like Rennie Slegers, right?
possible. Yeah, that's very possible. My only thing is that it doesn't seem like Arsenal even put in a bid,
Right.
which is the weird bit for me. And my other question is, why has Barcelona like very happily sold Kira Walsh to Chelsea, who are, I mean, arguably like the
Their
strongest
competition.
competitor in the Champions League. Like I understand, like it's very evident that the new coach at Barcelona has a preference for their midfield three, and I
Yeah.
think Patrick Guerrero is definitely a better defensive midfielder than Kira Walsh. So I understand that they're comfortable with that midfield three and they're confident in their midfield three. but still
Mhm.
selling one of your best players to a rival for like a fairly small fee, I would say. Like it was
Yeah.
only I think 440,000 pounds, and they bought her for 400,000 pounds. So I'm not very sure about this decision from Barcelona. Uh, Maybe they'll regret it, maybe they won't.
Yeah.
Time will tell, I guess. But yeah, those are the incomings. I don't want to spend more time. I think we'll get to see these players in the WSL, and we'll obviously get to talk about them more. But in terms of the outgoings, I think the big one is F. Perez. F. Perez is a player I'm actually quite fond of. She's like a very, very solid right back. But I think the thing is that she's not the fastest of players, so she doesn't go forward too much, which doesn't quite fit with Bompasso's system. Like she wants her fullbacks, both fullbacks, to be attacking. So anyway, she's kind of. It's very clear that she became like the third choice right back since Lucy Bronze arrived. So like from like a Euros perspective and generally wanting to play, I think I'm hoping that she finds like the game time that she wants at Strasbourg. I think is where she's going. So yeah, but as a player, like everybody speaks about Ev as one of those players who's just extremely hardworking, doesn't complain about anything, that sort of a player, somebody who just grinds uh, during training, etc. So yeah, good luck to Ev. I think the other big news is that Brighton has renewed her contract, and we are awaiting Millie Bright and Erin Cuthbert to do the same. So yeah, those are the big news coming out of Chelsea.
I
Um,
mean, that's a lot of big news coming out of Chelsea.
yeah,
But, I don't begrudge a behemoth getting bigger because, like you said, they did actually need those transfers. And also, like, if I was a big, like, it's not Chelsea's fault that everyone else is lagging behind. Chelsea just made the smart decisions earlier and built
yeah,
up their team to this position. So I
yeah,
think that it's more like do I think there should be such a gap between Chelsea and everyone else? No. But at the same time, I think that everyone else now has to do better. Like
yeah,
there needs to be more data science and transfers. There needs to be more like just research, scouts, like a proper network, like the way there is for like the men's game because
yeah,
without that it becomes an unequal thing, right? Because if Barcelona and Arsenal and Chelsea are just dealing with each other, then it
yeah,
becomes an incestuous circle.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
hopefully talent can be found like the NWSL is doing, right? Getting talent in from places in Africa, etc. So
Yeah,
talent, there's limitless potential around the world, and I hope that arrives in the WSL as the
yeah.
first premier destination for it.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think in terms of investment, I think if I was an Arsenal fan, I would be pretty disappointed because again, they really wanted Girma. Now, you can look at Arsenal squad and maybe say, hey, we don't need Naomi Girma because we don't need another centre back. But the thing is, this is not just any centre back. This is Naomi Girma.
Yeah.
Um, and there was an article in the Guardian which said that Arsenal were unwilling to break that transfer record, and like there was something specifically about breaking the transfer record that they were unwilling to do, which to me is it's just really bizarre. I think it really questions their ambition a little bit, because like Naomi Gama is going to bench any center back in the WSL. Like there's just no doubt, including like possibly Leah Williamson, Millie Bright, all the best ones, right? So that's the potential that she's coming with. So yeah, I mean it's interesting, and you know what? I'm honestly not going to sit here and say, this is bad for the league or anything of the sort. Like, despite being a Chelsea fan, I genuinely feel like now the ball is in everybody else's court to kind of figure out how they can catch up. Of course, like the gap between Chelsea and say a Villa or a Spurs is much higher. But we do know that clubs like Man City and Arsenal and Manchester United can actually spend this money on their women's team. But whether or not they're willing to do it is a question. But you know what, Ash? Let's move on to said one of the said clubs, Manchester United. Um, you've been closely watching their transfer window. Tell us what has happened on that part of Manchester.
I mean, it has been fairly lackluster. They got Kayla Rendell in from Southampton, who's a backup goalkeeper. They sent away Hayley Ladd to Everton, which we'll probably cover in the Everton section, but we mentioned it before, and she's slotted right into the Everton team. So that was a very necessary transfer for Everton. And Hayley Ladd wasn't getting many minutes at United, so it made sense both ways. Um, and Grace Clinton obviously has renewed her contract until 2026. So, like, and there's been a bunch of like other smaller renewals and loans. So now basically, I personally, of the window itself, it doesn't really inspire much confidence and doesn't inspire much ambition. Like,
Hmm.
think about it. United are sitting second on the table. Like, I don't expect them obviously to be challenging for first. There's too much of a gap there. But I do expect them to be like second is ours. Like
Hmm.
that should be the ambition. The ambition should be we are the challengers to Chelsea. Because
Yeah.
let's face it, like when we think about the big teams in the WSL, often we sort of like put United as an afterthought to Arsenal and to City, and there should be no reason to do that because they're playing the same wheelhouse.
Hmm.
United is still Manchester United, so
Yeah.
they have just as many fans as say Chelsea does, and
Hmm.
they have like just as much, like they should ideally have just as much of a pull as City,
Yeah.
so I would imagine that they could technically compete. So I would have wanted them to do more.
Hmm.
But coming to the specifics of it, now United, we did mention in our summer transfer window that they needed a backup goalkeeper, and
Hmm.
like we had said, like there's no good backup for Fallon, uh, and so they finally got that in Kayla Rendell from Southampton, like I said, and and what annoys me about this is the Grace Clinton renewal of contract until 2026. It's basically a 1 year extension. And, that seems to suggest that either Skinner or Clinton are still unsure of her long term involvement in the team. Like, it's not even like 1.5, 2 years. Like, that's if it had actually been a renewal of a contract, it would have been at least 2 years, right? That would show that this is a player that I have confidence in. I'm going to build my team. I see her in the future team that I'm building here,
Yeah.
and a 1 year extension just feels like play out the season and see what happens, you know.
Hmm.
And it, so it, so yeah, it just seems like Skinner and Clinton are both unsure of her long term involvement, and
Yeah.
perhaps that also stems from the fact that he hasn't solved this Toon Clinton dilemma,
Hmm.
in the sense of who to play where and
Yeah.
if they can play together or not. I don't think he solved that in his head, and so he's just like, I have Ella Toon. Do I really need Grace Clinton?
Hmm.
And I think that's the wrong way to look at it, because if you have two quality players in the same position, that means that your team, irrespective of rotation, is just going to be a juggernaut, right?
Yeah.
And that's what the point of competition is. The point is not having a first player and a backup. The point is having two players who are equally good, who are
Yeah.
constantly competing to start that day,
Hmm.
And so, to me, it just the whole thing sort of like stinks of a lack of ambition, and
Hmm.
I'm just really upset about it.
Just think about it slightly differently, Ash. I'm wondering if um, we'll be able to see more of where exactly United's ambitions are, maybe in the summer, because right now they're not playing Champions League football.
Yeah.
So if they do manage to finish second or even third, there's a possibility of playing Champions League football. And like, for example, that would be like an impetus for Grace Clinton to renew her contract. Like, everybody wants to play Champions League football. So will they bring in more quality players to their squad? Because I think right now, with the squad that they have, we mentioned that, like, say for example, um, United do have more depth than City, for example, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe it's too early to sort of say that there is no ambition, like, especially with bringing players. And I think I'm on board with your Clinton point, but with bringing players on board, I feel like if they continue to be this docile in the market in the summer as well, then that indicates a problem. Um,
You know,
especially.
I would, I tend to agree with you, especially because I'm also one of those people who like advocates patience when it comes to these things. Because the January window, it's always a rushed window, not much gets done. It's always just to plug holes. But you know what surprises me is that like there's no guarantee that United keep second. You know, like there's no guarantee they play in the Champions League, and it's highly like there's not that much of a points difference. Like it's possible that both Arsenal and City find their form and go ahead of United. You know, like Arsenal's
Yeah.
just been like unfortunate to like lose, have dropped a few points and then lost a manager. Otherwise, the
Hmm.
Arsenal team is, in my opinion, at least is leagues better than better than the United team. I mean, we
Yeah.
find out from the game, but
Yeah.
like. I do believe that. I genuinely believe that. And City is now strengthened to match the squad depth of United to some extent, you know. So I just feel like if they want to keep that second spot, they should have gotten in like at least that one extra player that makes the difference.
Yeah.
Um, and you know there are like they are still competing in the cups, so it's not like
Hmm.
there won't be any rotation happening whatsoever. So
True. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, sure, I take your point. Like, I do agree with it. Like, the summer transfer window is the more important one for United.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving to the other side of Manchester, Manchester City, like I mentioned, they've strengthened a little bit as well. They really needed some strengthening, but they've had a few controversial sending aways as well. Um, Kai, you are clue us in on what City is doing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So obviously, I think let's keep the juicy bits for later. But let's start with that the injury crisis that Man City. I mean, I won't call it. I mean, it is a crisis, not in
It's a
numerical terms,
crisis.
but yeah, not in numerical terms, but in terms of like the importance of the players that they've lost.
Yeah.
So Greenwood is gone. I am honestly surprised that they brought. I mean, they brought in Rebecca Nack, and she seems to be doing pretty well. But seeing Alexandri's performance and their centre back pairing, they've not had a lot of time to play together. But at the same time, I feel like maybe they needed another centre back in this window, because they did send away Alana Kennedy. So it's I'm a little concerned for that City back line right now. Um, Hopefully that pairing of Nak and Alexandri kind of comes good for City. But yeah, I continue to be concerned. Yeah, the other thing is, of course, there is that
So,
big, yeah,
like with City, right? Like, I do agree that the NARC thing that was just like totally necessary. But
mm,
I also think that, you know, I feel kind of bad for NARC because it's like been a totally trial by fire. Like, in
yeah,
terms of just like that game against United, I can't think of a worse time to make your debut for City.
yeah,
But but you know, like I don't know if Narc is enough because their defense still looks really leaky. Like
yeah,
I don't know if you've seen City recently, but they've just not been able to keep a clean sheet, and
Hmm.
that's it's very surprising because like they have been playing teams that they should technically not concede goals against,
Yeah.
but but yeah, and like with the injury to him, like City is just, I feel bad because they've been kind of hobbled in the front and hobbled in the back, you know, like
Yeah.
with the hemp situation as well. I just think that it's really sad. Like I mean, we were talking about Fowler and how we don't like rate her, and then she proved us wrong in the United derby. I mean, technically they lost that game, so I don't know how much she proved us wrong, but it is true that she wasn't their worst player.
Hmm.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
so
She was better by a
so
country mile.
yeah, exactly. I mean, she's good. Okay, I would take back any criticism I made of her. She's good, but I do think that both Fowler and Fujino are like not living up to their potential despite being rated really highly. So
Yeah.
like Caroline basically offers competition in that right wing spot. Although,
Yeah.
like knowing Gareth Taylor, she'd be playing left and then right and then center and then everything.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So
Carolyn is a really good player. I think she was the MVP in the in NWSL in the season before last. So, like somebody who can properly score goals really fast. She unfortunately did her ACL. So I
yeah.
think, yeah, it's a brilliant addition to their team, and somebody again who can play centrally and off the wings as well. So
Yeah.
it's not a bad signing at all. Yeah.
Yeah, coming to the drama, obviously, Chloe Kelly has been sent to Arsenal, and Weinrother has been brought in as cover for Kasparai, whose minutes are, like definitely need to be managed. I think everyone recognizes in City that Kasparai's minutes need to be managed, and or who knows, she might play in place of Wahabi on the other side because I don't think Gareth. I don't think Gareth rates Wahhabi either. But irrespective, Weinrother is coming to City. Weinrother.
Weinrother.
Anyway,
Yeah.
she can't play this week against Arsenal because she's uh, tied because of being a loanee from that club. Similarly with Chloe Kelly, so we won't see either of them this week. But
Yeah.
super strange, but really interesting. Like Kai, you mentioned some Twitter drama over Weinreuter. You want to
Yeah,
give us a
yeah. I mean, we rather. I mean, both these transfers, right? Like Vinrather has put up a post on Instagram saying, "Thank you, Arsenal, for everything." Like she's like leaving the club forever, which like I get. I feel like it's possible that she intends to hopefully stay in City or just move on to a different
yeah,
club where she gets like proper game time.
yeah,
uh, but it's really weird to do that, and Arsenal fans are just saying, "Sure, like don't come back, like just be there." That's been funny, but yeah, I mean, it's fair enough. I feel like we know. I think Emily Fox has kind of sealed her position there as their starting right back. So yeah, chances for and seems like with Slagers, like she's not been getting a whole lot of game time. So fair enough. Alone, like hopefully something works out for her there.
yeah. Another big thing to mention is Alana Kennedy moving away to Angel City. That's also one of those high drama Gareth Taylor things where, I just think he never really fancied her to begin with.
Yeah.
It's just one of those unfortunate club manager don't match players situations.
Yeah, it's not like Gareth Taylor is such a, I don't know, like there's this, this like cutting people out of the team entirely. Like honestly, like with Alana Kennedy, I'm actually kind of fine with it because I don't think she is like a City quality center back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Um, whereas like cutting a player like Chloe Kelly out of the team, it's just and this is not the only time. Like this like this even in the last season, there were a couple of players who just left City because they did not get a sniff, So I think Blackstad is one of them. There were a couple of other players as well. So it's weird. I don't know how I feel about that kind of a behavior from Gareth Taylor, and it's not the only time this has happened.
Yeah.
So I feel like once you fall out of favor with him, you're just done for. That's the
Yeah, yeah.
energy that I'm getting. Yeah.
I like, I don't agree with it. There is parts of it that I understand. Like, there are managers who just, there are 11 people on a team that they trust completely,
Yeah.
and that's not, and that's the reason they always sort of like put them out there, but that's also the reason they don't rotate.
Hmm.
So it's not just like a personal thing against a player that they don't fancy, but that
Yeah.
they just feel like this is the right balance, and then they never seem to veer off course from that, and which is
Hmm.
why they find it hard to like bring other players in a cup tournament or anything either also,
Yeah.
because like this now, my fragile balance will go away, and
Yeah.
it works for me. I think it's one of those sort of like complicated psychological things where they're just like, I don't feel comfortable unless all these players are on the pitch.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's no like, it just makes you a bad manager because it means you can't manage talent. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, that's precisely my point, right? Like if you if you like to get to a point where a player is completely cut out of a team is because I mean there has to be shots fired from both sides. The
yeah,
manager is not playing you, uh, and no player is happy with sitting on the bench. Like we know that.
yeah,
They want to play, but how are you ensuring that that frustration is kind of managed in some ways, like with Gareth Taylor, it's pretty evident that he's not able to manage that. So like not being able to rotate is like a big factor in managing that.
yeah.
So absolutely.
Yeah, moving on from City and all of the Gareth Taylor drama, we go to another club that has lots of drama, but some positive things as well happening. Good things happening maybe for Arsenal, and some whatever things happening also for Arsenal.
Hmm.
Kai, how do you feel about the Arsenal transfer window?
I am a little surprised by this transfer window because um, like I genuinely expected them to kind of strengthen in their wings, which they have fair enough with Chloe Kelly, but Chloe Kelly is also A on loan, and B is somebody who is not in form, but we also don't know what her form is because Gareth Taylor has not played her all season. So she's not had any consistent game time for us to even like gauge where she's at. But I would have expected Arsenal to be a little more ambitious, even in the midfield area. I feel like they obviously Catherine Kuhl, who's like a young Danish midfielder. She never really broke into the Arsenal team in a big way. She was on loan to Everton, where she had a decent season last season. But once again, like she came back, and Jonas was not particularly interested in playing her. So now she's moved on to Roma. Again, Euros coming up, important for her. She's like quite significant to that Danish team. In how they set up, etc. So that's good for Cool. But I would have expected them to strengthen even in the midfield a little bit because Kim Little, she's not somebody who can play like 90 minutes at this point. Leah Walty is very injury prone. Then you have Kuni Cross. Of course, they have Victoria Pelova coming back from an ACL, but again, I don't think she's going to contribute significantly this season. So I would have expected them to strengthen, especially because they're in the Champions League, they're in all four competitions. So again, I feel like that kind of signals a little bit of lack of ambition from them. Like, I feel like almost the attitude is that, hey, we did not play Champions League football last season. We are at least playing it this season. Whereas the ambition for a club like Arsenal should be, we are going to do whatever we can to win the Champions League this season. But okay, fair enough. But I think a good addition for them has been Jenna Neiswanger, who I actually love watching. I actually really like watching her play. She's like a proper attacking left back. She was, I think, in her first season in the NWSL, she was the rookie of the year. Um, and exciting player for Gotham. She had a decent season with Gotham in the last season. I think with the US women's national team uh, in the Olympics, she was not a starter. It was interesting for me to see because I thought it was guaranteed that Niswanga would start. I don't know why I thought that. But Emma Hayes seemed to prefer Crystal Dunn over Niswanga, which fair enough. They won the gold, so you can't criticize us too much. Um, but yeah, exciting player. I think from like a team perspective, if she does manage to slot into that left back position well, then that kind of maybe sorts Arsenal's winger problem a little bit because
Yeah.
Katie McCabe is not an Arsenal left back. She has been forced to play in many different positions
Yeah.
because of injuries, and then finally she somehow just, I don't know, one fine day Jonas decided she's going to be my left back, and that was that. So now maybe it's an opportunity for them to play her in the left wing because we know she has a really good cross in her, right? Like we've
Yeah.
seen
Yeah.
what she can even from that left back position. So um, maybe that's how they're trying to temporarily solve their winger problem. But the big news is obviously Chloe Kelly coming in on loan. Again, loads of drama. Chloe Kelly putting up on Instagram saying, it's sad that the club that I'm playing for is blocking the move that I want, etc. To be fair to like City, good that they blocked that move to United. Basically, Chloe Kelly wanted to stay in Manchester with her family, and playing for United seemed like the best way to do that, I think. But obviously, City are not going to sell her to a rival or send her
Yeah.
on to a rival, like direct rival.
Yeah.
So now she's made that move to Arsenal. Again, like it's one of those things where she's like, oh, she actually played for Arsenal when she was younger, and so she's
Who hasn't?
yeah, back to my roots sort of a thing, the whole thing with Van Ruyter as well as Chloe Kelly, I found it really, really funny. But in between all of this drama, like Brighton did put in a bid, I think, for Chloe Kelly, which she turned down, which I thought was
Yeah.
very interesting. I feel like,
I actually feel like, if you really wanted to play, like if that was your goal, I would like, and you wanted to play this attacking football and score lots of goals, etc. Like personally, I would pick Brighton over Arsenal because like the chances that I'm going to start, like the Arsenal front line is exceptional. They're already scoring 4 or 5 goals a game,
yeah.
so the chances that you start over any one of them is extremely low. I know they're all in all four competitions, so you'll get to play some of the cup games, etc.
Hmm.
But like at the same time, like your ambition, like you moved to play day in and day out in the league. So with Brighton, you had the chance to do that. I think there isn't any player at Brighton who I would say is. I mean, there are players in Brighton who can compete with Chloe Kelly, but there's nobody at Brighton who I can say is like leagues ahead of Chloe Kelly, who would start over
Yeah.
Chloe Kelly.
I think
So
Vidosic just kind of showed that like he doesn't have like nailed on starters. Like I think that's
yeah,
been very interesting. Like the fact that he happily dropped Karabali, for example, who I
yeah,
think is a wonderful defender. Like the fact that Seke, despite having that whatever like fiery start that she had, has been dropped
yeah,
for Madison Haley. So he is like somebody who's very unapologetic about these things, and I
yeah,
completely agree with you. If the intent was to like you want to get into the Euro squad. Like, of course,
yeah,
this works out with Arsenal, where she maybe pips Beth Mead to that right wing position, and she
yeah,
kind of like becomes Arsenal's like starting right winger, and that's great for Chloe Kelly. But it's
yeah,
still a massive risk that she's taking, I would say.
yeah,
And it's not like Wiegman is somebody who doesn't look at other like it's not like she
yeah,
picks
yeah.
her
She's not the
squad.
kind of manager who's like only picking the top team
Top
players,
four,
and
exactly. She's not at all like that. Like for example, Fran Kirby's gone to Brighton now. She
yeah,
called up Kayla Rendell for Christ's sake from Southampton, I think, in
yeah.
like one of the this
Yeah,
things.
and
So
honestly, like Ash Neville's played for England, and like she is playing for a really sucky Spurs, like really
yeah,
sucky. I mean, Spurs
yeah,
now are slightly better, but there was a time when we were battling relegation. So,
exactly. So yeah, I mean it's a bit weird, but at the same time they needed a speed. Arsenal, I think for Arsenal this works out well because they needed a speedy winger. Chloe Kelly is a good player. Again, I don't want to comment on her form too much. Maybe she'll be in flying form in 2 games.
yeah,
But yeah, hopefully she's able to make a case for herself to get into that Euro squad because I feel like it's a bit of a soft spot for English fans, especially because Chloe Kelly
yeah,
scored the winner in that Euros final. So to not have her in the Euro squad in the very next Euros is a bit, you know, I'm sure
yeah,
it's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. So
yeah.
hopefully she gets into the squad. Yeah.
Yeah. And one more thing I wanted to say about Arsenal. I feel like we, in like talking about the players, one thing we forget is that Rene Slegers was appointed manager, which I think is the biggest transfer, the biggest signing of them all.
True.
I think I do think you're right about like Arsenal's lack of ambition to some extent because uh, if you think about it, the second half of the season, like in terms of fixtures, like when you're looking at transfers, you also want to see what games you're playing, right? And the truth is, Arsenal have a Dennis Leggers, uh, to her credit, won most of the games she played, except the game against Chelsea. But also to her detriment, all the teams she faced were slightly, I mean, you would say, give with all due respect, that they were easier teams than the team
Yeah.
she is facing now. She's facing Chelsea, she's facing the, Arsenals and the cities. And like, I think that sort of changes, sorry, the cities and the Uniteds, etc. That sort of changes the complexion of this kind of squad you need.
Hmm.
Plus Champions League, of course.
Yeah.
So I personally think I thought that they would go like I can still understand not strengthening an attack because if you don't seem to have a problem scoring goals, but
Hmm.
midfield for sure, like especially because Leah Walt has just come back from injury. Like
Yeah.
it's just been proven that that you need cover in midfield. Like
Hmm.
that's something you have just faced. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like a lack of ambition.
Hmm.
Anyway, anything
Yeah.
else you wanted to add to the Arsenal window?
No, no, I think it's okay. Like I feel like uh they will probably like kind of cruise through the season, get a Champions League spot, maybe win a cup. Who knows? I mean that League Cup has their name written on it already, I feel.
Yeah.
They can't seem to stop winning that. So I think Arsenal will be fine. Yeah.
Great. That takes us to the uh, next round, part two. Everyone, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you leave some comments on this video about the top four teams. But make sure you also move on to watching part two of the transfer videos, which is all of the other teams. We thought about whether to put out like a 3 hour long video covering all the teams, but then we had some sympathy for your patience, so we're doing this in bits. We hope to see you on the other side of this video in the next part. Make sure you tune in for that, and uh, yeah, see you on the other side. Bye bye.